Hello and welcome to Media 7. In this week's show, we're looking at the health of the mag trade at home and abroad. Magazines have been our companions in times of plenty, but how is the trade faring through the credit crunch? How long can it hold out against the internet? Well, this might help. Where once we'd had but a few periodicals to pass the time, the 1990s saw an explosion of choice on the racks. Magazines turned out to be the place where indies could make a buck, usually with mags about cars, computers and homes. But that was then. What's happening now that the economy's turned south? Well, those women's magazines are hurting a little, New Idea more than most. In Britain and America, they're reckoned to be losing readers to gossip websites. And the great invention of the 1990s, the Lad mag, is going down the toilet, which is where some people thought it came from in the first place. Orgasms are out of fashion, with Cosmo and Cleo crashing. Food porn is losing ground. Cuisine and dish are down, but the healthy food guide is flying off the shelves. The shelter category is collapsing in America in the face of a housing slump. Here, Urbis and Home and Garden are also shedding readers, but New Zealand Gardening magazine is up. Are we staying home and cocooning? And amid it all, some commentators are seeing a turn back to the titles trampled in the lifestyle stampede. The quality press is going gangbusters in Britain, and here, North and South has increased its circulation in the last two audits. One theory is that the financially secure over 50s are the hot new magazine market now that the 30 and 40-somethings are struggling to pay the mortgage. So, is there another shoe set to drop? Will overseas trends, good and bad, flow through here? And who's going to get hurt? And why did so many New Zealand magazines whose audited circulation fell in the past year experience an apparent increase in readership over the same period? Joining us to address those and other questions are Wendell Nissen, the former editor who literally wrote the book about working in the weekly magazine trade, former listener editor Finlay McDonald, and an editor who's travelling very well at the moment, New Zealand Gardeners Linda Hallinan. Wendell, if we could start with you. The gossip seems to be that women's magazines are on the slide and that people who actually want to read gossip are going about Paris Hilton are going to get their fix from Perez Hilton online. Do you think that's realistic? Is that what's happening?
That's a primary reason. I mean, you can everyone logs on every morning and gets the gossip straight up. So you're not going to wait a week, are you, to get Women's Day or New Idea or Women's Weekly? I think there's a lot of other things going wrong with the weekly mags, though. They have sort of lost touch with who their reader is. It's very hard when you do mass market because it literally is mass. It's anything from 15 to 65. But they seem to have lost touch with what they're into, you know, this whole, the gardening movement, the healthy living, it's all still about gossip. The other thing that I really get annoyed at is they don't do enough with the New Zealand celebrities. I mean, it's something that I tried to do unsuccessfully. But when did you last see Holmes on the balcony? You know, when did you last see...
But on the other
hand, they're not fighting for those stories.
What's different now is that you've got these Sunday newspaper gossip pages who like to think they own that celebrity culture.
Don't be ridiculous. They're full of Parnell real estate agents and people from the advertising media. I mean, I don't know half those. Do you know any of those people?
No. They're famous for being in those pages, aren't they?
They're famous, yeah, exactly. And I wonder sometimes if they sort of pay the photographers to get in them. So they're not doing celebrity either. They're doing, you know, these people from Parnell that no one knows. So we're not actually raping our celebrity culture as much as we could. I don't like using that word, but that's pretty much what we should be doing. If you want the circulation, you should be out there giving us our local celebrities. We have a lot of them. We're not using them. We're not abusing them. And you're not going to sell magazines just running, as you say, pictures of Paris Hilton that you saw a week ago on the net.
Finlay, on the other hand, the recent stories, you know, from similar circulation audits out of New York and London is that quality is back. The Economist in London is absolutely trumpeting its success as a return of seriousness. And to some extent, maybe it's happening here. North and South has had two successive circulation periods of increase. Is that something we'd like to think, or is it something that's really happening?
I think it's something we'd like to think. One swallow does not summer make. You know, North and South may have had a rebound on the back of a nice makeover. It's been redesigned, it's more accessible. Maybe some of the people that don't read New Idea anymore have found, you know, something more nourishing in North and South. I'm sceptical about readership figures anyway. I mean, circulation's where it's at. If The Economist is booming internationally, then fine. But most serious, and I have to include newspapers along with magazines because there aren't that many serious magazines Sorry, Wendell.
You coined the phrase, is my mortgage making me fat?
Is my house making me fat?
Is my house making me fat?
And I didn't coin it, a friend of mine did, but yes, anyway.
But is there a reality there in that you get a newsstand bump from those kinds of stories on your cover? Even if your subscribers think, it's not serious.
Middle-class people on middle incomes buy magazines, particularly anything that's remotely serious, like you might say North and South, Metro, Listener, etc. So you're always trying to do lifestyle stories that have a current affairs edge to them. And if you do them too often, they lose their currency. If you do them occasionally, they can give you happy results.
Linda, the other trend that everyone's talking about is nesting or cocooning. Do you think that's got anything to do with the recent success of your magazine? Because you've been going very well.
Well, I actually personally put it down to the fact that the editor's a genius, the content's fantastic, the readers love us. It's got nothing to do with the recession. But of course, the recession is fantastic news for gardening because people spend more on their homes. But what I don't think we really know this time is what sort of impact property prices are really going to have on that nesting instinct. Because if you think your house has lost $100,000, you're not going to spend $15,000 or $20,000 doing up the garden. So I think it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But certainly, it's a great time for gardening.
We've actually seen that in the US, where the housing slump is biting even harder than it is here. Renovate Your House magazines are absolutely collapsing.
Well, the whole point of those magazines was basically you can increase the value of your home. Your Home and Garden made its backbone was that. So it's tricky to know.
There's another aspect to that. My pet theory back when I was in magazines was that people felt disenfranchised by politics. They switched off once they'd been lied to enough for long enough by politicians, and they turned to the one area of their lives that they could control, which was their house and their garden. Not for any bad reason, as the magazine called House and Garden. And people, those magazines flourished at a time when politics and the economy had also fragmented society. So people went, there was nothing collective going on. You may as well just go and cultivate your garden.
And it really looked back then that journalistically driven magazines were over because it was the rise of the lifestyle magazine, wasn't it?
Absolutely. If I could just make a point about Linda's magazine, though. She is the hardest working editor. No, seriously, I'm not sucking up to her. I subscribe to her magazine. She sends emails out every week to people. She does blogs. She goes overseas and she actually is working very hard on what I think is at the core of any magazine, especially something a bit softer like gardening or mass market, and its connection with your reader. And she works very hard at doing that, and her magazine reflects a real understanding of what her readers want. And I think if there's any fault with magazines at the moment, they're edited by people who have no idea who their readers are and no interest, actually, and might, in the case of the Listener, have other things going on.
Not like it was in our day, Linda.
Oh, thank you. Exactly. But, they don't care about the reader anymore. They care about whatever politics they're trying to push forward. They're not really sitting back and saying, I know who this magazine's for, and I think that is the big mistake at the moment.
Well, that sounds worth pursuing, and we'll do that after the break. And we'll also try and sort out what readership really means in those surveys.